Free trade, good in theory, and great when everyone observes the rules of capitalism and enterprise. The world is facing a collapse of the theory and a global tariff war. Tit for tat, tariff and counter-tariff. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
The word starts with a T, and it's this man's favourite.
The word tariff is the most beautiful in the dictionary.
And the world is set to sweat in the heat of this semantic economic love.
I'm going to impose a tariff on the outside world, and they're going to pay it.
BRICS, an international organisation comprising Russia, China and regional hegemony contenders in the global south, is set to be smitten with Donald Trump's adored economic plan.
The idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs.
Notably, the president-elect has also announced that he would impose tariffs of 60% on imports from China. But Trump's tariffs war would also engulf the European Union. He vowed to impose a 20% across-the-board tariff on some $575 billion worth of US imports of cars, pharmaceutical products, machinery and many more products from the bloc. This is despite a minor difference between US and EU tariff rates. The World Trade Organization data has shown that in 2023, the average US tariff rate was a little over 3% against the average EU tariff rate of 5%. But the 10% EU tariff on passenger cars has always made Trump burst a blood vessel, just like the average EU agricultural tariff of about 11% against close to 5% imposed by the US. Analysts have argued that Trump's plan is to bypass the European Commission, which enjoys jurisdiction over trade for EU members, and strike deals with each of the 27 countries individually. For her part, Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, has tried to pacify European leaders, advising not to retaliate but to negotiate with Trump should he roll out the tariffs. She believed that a global trade war was in nobody's interest and would likely bring about global reduction in GDP. But the European Commission's former point person during Trump's first time in the White House, Ignacio Becerro, said one must not be naive and dissuaded going into negotiations with Trump without a retaliation option at hand.
Our guest today, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Witold Wiliński. He's at the Institute of International Economic Policy at the Warsaw School of Economics. Welcome once more.
Good afternoon.
Always great to have you. Our subject today is the impending global trade war. Are we in one, or are we in a series of bilateral trade conflicts with EU, USA, US, China, that sort of thing?
I think that the period that we have now, this is a period when in the global economy we are changing the paradigm. The last 40 years, it was a period of a liberal economy, and from the period of the administration of George W. Bush and Barack Obama, we can observe a kind of neo-protectionism in the policy of the United States. To give you some examples, in US, during the period of George W. Bush and during the period of Barack Obama, United States have blocked some foreign investments from United Emirates and from China. Investments made by state-owned enterprises. And I think that it was the beginning of the new protectionism in the global economy. So what we can observe now, this is one of the consequences of the previous decisions.
Does this mean that we'll be looking back to this 40-year period as a golden age of liberal globalism, liberal free trade? Or does this mean that this level of protectionism is a permanent feature of the world capitalist system?
I think that the previous 40 years, it was a golden age. It was a golden age which was provoked by the policy of United States and by the policy of European Union. The free trade, bilateral investments agreements between United States and, for example, African countries or countries from South America, it was a tool that was helpful for the expansion of United States corporations. Because if United States are signing an agreement with Ghana, a bilateral investment agreement, it means that US investments are protected in Ghana, but we cannot observe the opposite
around,
because
yes.
Ghana is not investing in US.
Yes.
So the liberal economy, it was a kind of tool for the global expansion of US corporations around the globe. And now the situation is changing because we are observing the growth of the economy and the growth of the competitiveness of the Chinese economy. So United States now have faced this problem and have react to the situation that we have.
You say that this bilateral thing, you would take the Ghana and US example.
It was only an example.
Yeah,
Yep.
but one side always seems to be the stronger, and if the whole the idea of a bilateral trade agreement favours the stronger side rather than the reciprocation by the weaker side. In the current Chinese-US trade conflict, are we seeing a conflict of equal strength partners, or has China overtaken now? And is the United States in the position of Ghana, as it used to be?
I think that they are not equal. They have a completely different roots of the economy, and they have a completely different standards related to the growth of the economy, related to the growth of corporations. In the case of China, there is a lot of state-controlled or state-owned enterprises which are investing or are trying to invest in Europe, in United States. And from the perspective of liberal economies, this is a problem because they are investing and they can be not only a simple example of the expansion of Chinese enterprises in the international market, but they can realize some elements of the Chinese government policy. That's the problem.
The United States, obviously a great capitalist power, China, a great communist power, or state-owned, state-controlled power. Does the world capitalist system rely on an acceptance of some ground rules for everybody? We know that China has pirated intellectual property since the 1990s, restrictions on its own internal market for external investment. What's so good about... You can understand why China does it, and you can understand why America does it. What's so good about this global free trade anyway?
The question is if we have for all the same rules. And I think that in the case of United States, in the case of European countries, we thought that after the accession of China to the WTO, we will not have the same type of problems that we had before the accession. But we can observe some problems with the intellectual property. We can observe some problems with subsidies for Chinese state-owned or state-controlled enterprises. We can observe some realization of Chinese government policy by Chinese corporations. So we had the accession of China to the WTO, but this is not what is in 100% what we wanted to obtain.
Moving on to Europe now, the EU seems to have a protectionist regulatory mindset in terms of its external relations with the US, for example.
So Europe, after some decisions related to the new protectionism in United States, have implemented a similar rules. And these rules we have in Germany, in France, in Poland, which means that in the case of these countries, they are trying to control foreign investors, which are not investors from the EU. They could be from China, they could be from Russia, but in the case if they can have the influence on critical infrastructure, on the national security, governments can stop this type of investments. And this is a kind of game changer that we can observe during the period of the past 5 years.
So free trade isn't free. You mentioned this idea of when national security is at stake.
I'm talking now about foreign direct investment, investments. Concerning tariffs on trade, of course, in Europe, the market is protected. You can see the discussion related to the agreement with Mercosur and the negotiations that we have in Europe between South American countries. So we are discussing about tariffs. We had some problems related to tariffs with India a few years ago.
But the Mercosur, as I understand it, is not very popular with the agricultural, the farming community in the EU. So we're back to this, who benefits from this?
This is the problem of the type and the system of the agriculture that we have in Europe, which is intensive, in comparison to South American, which is extensive. And the cost of the production, the case of the extensive production, are completely different. So that's the risk from the point of view of the European market and European agriculture.
When you look on the great historical perspective about conflict, interstate conflict, is there a pattern to how trade wars perhaps lead to hot wars? For example, the 1930s, the Great Depression. That kind of thing. Do you see a structure in how the trade war starts, develops, and then finishes?
It depends on the historical moment. It depends on the situation of the economy, which is imposing tariffs. The case that you mentioned about the crisis in United States in 30s, this is a good example. But at the modern history, we had a similar situation concerning tariffs between Japan and the United States in 80s, concerning the automotive sector and subsidies that Japanese corporations obtained at that period.
A final question to you, Professor. President-elect Donald Trump recently tweeted that trade wars are good and easy to win. I presume you don't agree with that? Or neither they're good nor easy to win?
I think that the answer is not simple, because when you are imposing tariffs, you can lose the competitiveness of your enterprises. This is the first point, your local enterprises. You can increase prices of different products in your market. So this is not a situation which is in 100% clear. and obvious. And I think that the situation that we have during the past 2-3 days related to tariffs between US and China are more related to it's not only a kind of economic war. This is related to the real war, because when we are analyzing tariffs on or some blockades or problems on the semiconductor sector, the semiconductor sector is very important from the military point of view. The second point, the response of the Chinese government related to the rare earth metals, this is the same story. Because without these metals, you cannot produce semiconductors, and you cannot develop your army in the way that you want.
Yes, when national security is at stake, theory goes out of the window. Professor Wiliński, thank you very much for coming on to the programme.
Thank you.
Great to have you. That's all we have time for today. Do join us next time for How We Got Here.